welcome to Note to Self, a mental health podcast by us Aloni students. I'm Megan.
I'm Zane.
I'm Azan.
And this is Zia, and she's our guest for today while we talk about why friendship is so difficult. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast. Like I said, today's episode is about why is friendship so difficult? I think it's something that we've all kind of had some kind of experience with. And I think one thing that's so important about that is that kind of like social wellness is important to our mental health, not only like in the ways we all know of like it's important to be social and have community, but also just like something that we talk about a lot here is having a sense of belonging. And I think that's a thing that I have found very helpful for my mental and physical health. And when I did not have that, I think like during like COVID times, it was really hard to socialize with other people. So I think one way to kind of like break into this topic is, what is a friend? Whether that is your own personal definition or something that you use to figure out what a friend, like what does that mean to you? What is friendship? What separates a friend from any other person in your life?
I think in my experience specifically, I've had a lot of different definitions for friends that have changed over time, because back in elementary school, middle school, high school, your friends were the people that you sat around in class. When you were younger, they were the friends you chose to play with at recess. But as you go into college, it's more so the people that you work with, the people that you're forced to interact with. And it's not that it's not as genuine anymore, but it becomes a lot more situational. And then also when you think about the levels of friendships, there's some friends that you might not talk to for months at a time, but every time you reconnect, it's always the same connection. And then with some friends, you just choose to see them every day because it's convenient. With some friends, it's more about the work you do together. With some friends, it's more about the conversations you have, even if you don't see each other in person. So I really think there's, like, not one straight answer to give.
Yeah, I think it's different for everyone. And it's kind of like, I kind of see it all on, like, a spectrum of where there's, like, a threshold between acquaintance and friend and, like, complete strangers. So they are all, like, on, like, not necessarily a timeline because it's not super linear, but I definitely can tell when someone has moved into like the friend category rather than the acquaintance category. But I would say I probably have more acquaintances than I do friends.
No, yeah, I definitely agree that there's like a different definition for friends depending on who you are and your own experiences. I would say that similar to what Zia said, my definition of friends has definitely altered throughout the years, which I think it should, just because the more experiences and more situations you're in, you get a better idea of who your real friends are. I think that similar to you, I have like strangers, acquaintances, friends, and I have close friends. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just something that I don't know for sure. Like, it's not like, oh, after 3 times of helping me out, they're my friend or whatever. It's more just like, I guess my own personal gauge of how it is. It's more just like as time goes on and like just to see how much that connection builds up, it'll eventually come to the point where like I just naturally view them as a friend rather than like me like determining it, which I think is also really important to note that like friendship isn't something like that you have to like necessarily say like verbally address that you're my friend. It could just be something like a simple internal notion.
Right. I think it's interesting though. As a kid, no matter who it was, like if I interacted with them on any level, they were automatically a friend when I was talking about them to someone else. So I'd be like, literally, there would be someone in my math class that I only talked to once. And when I was telling my mom about something that happened during my day, I'd be like, so my friend told me, and she'd be like, are they actually your friend? And I'd be like, I guess not, but like I just was so used to calling everyone my friend, and so I think after she pointed that out to me, probably quite a bit, I started being a little more picky and choosy about who I was calling my friend. I still call a lot of people my friends, even though they're not sometimes, just in random conversations, but it's more out of habit than anything.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. I think after a while, you definitely get you get a feel of like who the people are in your life, like how close you are with them. Kind of what level of friendship they are, as we mentioned earlier. For me personally, um, I don't know, I'd have to think for a second. I'd say I have like three to four close friends. I don't really have a best friend, but besides that, everyone else is kind of like like a peer. I would say a peer, an acquaintance. So
Yeah. I think that's so important, though, that you talked about best friends, because I think that has been something that, like, has been so ingrained in our culture of having one friend that's, like, your best friend. And I always had that, like, thought in my mind of, oh, I have to have, like, a best friend, when that's not necessarily ever really been the case for me. There have been people throughout my life that I would label as my best friend, but it was usually the people that just like were around me the most rather than anything. So I think that's important that you brought that up.
I definitely resonate with you, Megan, when you say that. I think that it's really advertised and glorified to have like the best friend or the person you tell everything to. I think at least from in my case, I never really had a best friend. I think there was definitely some people or like a specific person or two that I really did get along with really well, and I did spend a lot of my time with throughout like elementary, junior high, high school. But I feel like I was never really able to call them my best friend because there was always still like a sense of difference, if that kind of
Right.
makes sense. I feel like it's really hard to find someone who's like exactly the same, or not exactly the same, but like you click with in such a high level where like
Right.
you can establish that they're your best friend.
Yeah.
And I definitely am still friends with some people who, at the time, I guess you could be viewed as my best friends. But over time, things change and you fade. And yeah, I guess
And
that's
that's not to
that.
say that people can't be best friends. Like I've definitely seen people who have I would consider as they're definitely best friends just cuz either they've been together as friends for a really really long time, or like whatever, they label themselves as best friends or whatever. It's not to say that it can't happen. It's just not not necessarily something that I've necessarily had, or that I feel like I've had. Um, and also, like, I feel like it shouldn't be like the goal of having friends to have a best friend, because you're always going to end up disappointed if that's the case. Like, I feel like what I've noticed throughout my life with friends is different friends bring different, gifts and traits with them. And so rather than having just like one best friend that I go to for everything, I have a friend I go to for this thing. I have a friend I go to this for this thing. I have a friend I go to for this thing. I have a friend that knows about this, so I can talk to them about this. I have a friend who likes this, and we share that in common, so I can, talk to them about that when something happens. But like, I feel like it's easier to look at it from that perspective, so that you're not just depending on one person for like unattainable goal or like expectations, I guess.
I think what you said about sorry, what you said about expectations kind of resonated with me, because in my experience at least, and like not to get too personal into like my own story, but I've had somebody I considered a best friend for I'd say the majority of my life. And I think at one point I took a step back and realized like I don't have anything in common with this person. I don't look forward to talking to them or hanging out with them, but I call them my best friend because I've known them for so long and I have so many, I guess, memories with them that it's hard to let go of that connection. And then one other thing that I experienced was the expectations that came with having that best friend, because after I sort of let them go, I kept looking for that person in other people. I kept telling myself like, oh, I can't consider this person my best friend because they don't hang out with me as much as this person did. We don't talk about the same things as much as me and this other person did. So kind of like the expectations people create for you throughout your life, and also how that idea has changed, especially at the age we are right now, because 10 years ago the majority of us right now, we're like 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
10 years from now, we're going to be 30 years old, and like looking at who we consider closest to us at those three different time frames, it's like kind of crazy to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess what out of like the different types and categories of friends, what are some things that you've noticed, or do you have a bunch of different categories, or do you have maybe just a couple?
Categories and like what each friend is for,
Or
like,
just like we talked about, like I guess the level of connect as far as like from acquaintance to friend. There's still like, I guess, a middle piece too. I don't know what it would be called, but I know there is some, like, it's a spectrum, like I said. So anywhere on that side, but there's also like different categories, like close friends, friends you know from school or work, family friends, and maybe long distance friends too.
I guess I have some stuff to say about that. So for me, a lot of this really came after graduating high school, because when you're at school, you think like everyone is your friend, or like everyone kind of meshes into one. Earlier we talked about having like a best friend. So usually, to me, the way I saw it, usually it was just like, everyone has their best friend, and then everyone else is kind of just like friends. But after high school, you really understand the different stages of friendship. So, for example, there was really just people you were cool with. Yeah, you met, you exchanged words, you maybe had a class together. Occasionally, you might do something like school related for the school during then. So I consider those school friends, and you really never see them again after high school. And then there are the friends who everyone goes to different schools, take their different path, whatever it might be. They might not even be in school, but my point is that there's some sort of distance, right? So to me, I'd consider those long distance friends, but I like to call it like a catch up friend. Like you get on a phone call, once a year, catch up, see how things are going. Maybe when they're back home, like during like the holidays or like the summer, you meet up. So I'd consider those like once a year, or like catch up friends.
Mm.
And then close friends, I'd consider people you exchange words with often, or and like meet frequently. And that really just goes to show like how important like your location and locality is, because it's really hard to maintain friendships when there's a physical distance between you. So to me, a lot of that was really shown after high school, like the different stages, how hard it is to maintain a friendship, and where friends are on the spectrum.
I think one thing that stuck out to me was how you mentioned that it changed a lot after graduating high school. Because in my experience, I graduated in 2020, literally, what, like 3 months after the pandemic or the lockdown hit. And one thing I noticed was throughout high school, I considered myself to have a lot of friends. I would have people in every class to talk to. I would always have somebody to like catch up with when I'm walking around campus. But as the lockdown went on, I think even like 6 months after it started, I was at a point where I literally had nobody to text. Like, I could turn off my phone for 2 weeks. I would not have gotten a single text during that time. And it really made me think about the effort that people put into other people, and also maybe how the pandemic sort of affected that. Because once I realized that, I realized how lonely I was, how like I wasn't getting any messages, nobody was checking up on me. I started doing that for other people. I tried to text people here and there, like people I maybe hadn't seen in a year because of the pandemic, but even when I did, a lot of the times, like, it would just be dry. Everybody was doing their own thing. Nobody really seemed to sort of care. And I feel like our threshold for, like, human interaction was, like, very, very deeply affected. So what are you guys' experience in terms of, like, how much effort you put into your friendships now versus back then when it was a lot more situational to interact with people?
I think I've grown a lot in that aspect, particularly because I had a very similar experience, because I also was class of 2020. And I also think there's something to say about like just graduating in general from high school, because you do leave a lot behind, and a lot of people, I mean, yeah, that's just like a whole nother conversation. But when the lockdown first started, I was okay because I had like my theater friends and stuff like that, because we were supposed to have a show like literally 2 weeks after the pandemic started, or shutdown started. And so I still had like them to talk to and stuff, and so like we would play Minecraft and stuff like that for the first like couple weeks. And then I think it's after graduation that things started going downhill, of like people started not reaching out. The group I had kind of died out, and we didn't really talk anymore. And then it just like kind of went downhill so fast because I wasn't going to school with any of the same people that I went to high school with. Like, none of them were going to Ohlone. And so it was like just like leaving that comfort zone, and also the fact that I didn't know where to look for friends after that. And so after being here, even, I was online, so I wasn't making any new friends. So literally for probably like the first 5 months after graduation, I literally had no one to talk to. No one was reaching out. No one was asking, hey, how are you doing? If anyone was, it was me. I was the one to reach out to people, and I would get dry responses, or I would get no responses, which is really hard because I thought I had friends, and I think I had friends, but I didn't have close friends until college. And even now, it's like, I think I had to grow a lot in that because I personally do have a lot of expectations because I really prioritize my friendships. I am used to be the first one to text, the one who was always checking in, the one who was, I felt like I was putting so much effort in and not really getting anything from the other person. And I have since kind of like focused on the few people who I do feel close enough to that it is like a mutual thing. But for the longest time, it felt like I was the only one putting in the work. And I think, one, boundaries really helped with that, but two, just like understanding that not everyone is going to be a close friend, and prioritizing the people who really you can tell they care.
I'm so sorry. I need to step out for 1 second.
Okay, there.
I think one thing I remember you saying is like how you were the person always putting in effort when other people weren't reciprocating. Right? And I think I also experienced the same thing, but that also made me think about like, how is the effort I'm putting into people now after, I guess, not after the pandemic, I guess like now that things are a lot more back in person and like it's starting to feel a little bit more like high school again, where I can walk around on campus, see somebody I know, strike up a conversation, and I find myself more of a people person than I ever was. I feel like, at least based on the friends that I've talked to, for some people it was the opposite. The pandemic forced them to sort of like get cooped up. They got comfortable with their own selves. They got comfortable in their own space. They stopped socializing, and they don't really care much for people and interactions anymore, whereas it was the opposite for me. Ever since that, I've been like doing whatever I can to make the most interactions, to meet the most people, even if they're not people I consider friends. I'm seeking interactions now. So how do you think you've changed in terms of that?
I'm definitely the person who no longer, I didn't even really seek out friends before that. I just like really hate initiating things. So if people came up to me, I would talk back, but like I was never the person to initiate stuff like that unless we were like working together, and there was like an easy way for me to initiate that. So like in theater, you kind of have to talk to your peers, so that was easier to initiate. But yeah, I still don't really initiate a lot. I find myself, I was one of those people who became very comfortable just entertaining myself a lot of the time. And so I do find that most of my friends, especially my closer friends, are people I've been forced to be around. And that sounds like weird when I say forced. I don't mean that as a bad thing. I just mean, it means we have common interests, whether that's for work or for, I don't really meet people in classes, honestly. But that could be just because it's my first semester back on campus. But like whether it's work or extracurricular activities, stuff like that, that's usually where I meet people lately. And I find those relationships more meaningful just because I'm around them more. And I guess proximity is a close thing for me. Like, I cannot do long distance friendships or people who only catch up once a year. To me, that doesn't feel like a friendship. But I think that's also a thing of expectations, right? Of like, different people have different expectations of different, friends. And I think like, for me, just checking in once a year, unless, like, if we had established beforehand that we were gonna only check in, like, every once in a while, I think it would be fine. But usually that's not the case, at least for me. So, like, that's something that would be, it wouldn't feel like a friendship to me, whereas proximity really matters to me, being around each other, even, you know, whether we plan to or not.
Do you want to get caught up on what we were
Yeah,
talking about?
that'd be
So
great.
I basically kind of shared how before the pandemic I considered myself, I guess, an introvert. Like, I didn't really care much for people because I was forced to kind of be around them all the time. But after the pandemic, I'm more of an extrovert than ever. I realized, yeah, it kind of made me realize how much I need people around me, how much I need that social interaction. Whereas I know for a lot of people, it was the opposite. They got comfortable in their own solitude. So what was it like for you?
Wow. The pandemic was definitely very interesting, to say the least.
Mm-hmm.
I know Megan talked about this a bit earlier, but I guess us being so isolated from each other kind of showed us who our real friends are.
Yes.
And who we still stay in touch with, and who we really didn't anymore. And we kind of were able to distinguish who we're close to and who we're not. I think that for me, it really did highlight who my close friends are, because, like I kind of talked about before, although I might have friends, there's a few of those I call like my good friends, which I talk to like frequently, catch up with and stuff. And there's other friends I still do consider friends because they are, just not on that level. Right. And so I think that during the pandemic, it really did help me realize who my close friends are and who I can count on. Those who would text me, we would call, we would like try to make plans like after like, things got better, or just online. And yeah, so it was honestly a weird experience. I definitely did feel alone, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the beginning, because I feel like everyone was in such a big shock that like no one really knew how to react. And I guess I'm a person who like likes to. I'm usually the one who reaches out for stuff.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, I felt really alone because I noticed that I was putting in more effort into some relationships than other people were. And I think it took me some time to realize that that's fine. And just because I was close with them in school doesn't mean that I have to be close with them now. And like just that concept of letting go was kind of tough for me, because I do like try to like maintain my friendships, keep everything the same. Like that's just my nature. But it kind of reminded me that like although we were friends then, that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not friends. They were never my friend. But it's more just like, as time progressed, we went our different ways. And although they might have been a great friend to me during that time of my life, it was just, I guess, their time to maybe segue out. Mm-hmm. And so I still appreciate that friendship I still had with them. It's just that I don't view them as a friend anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. I think there are also just like a bunch of reasons why a lot of people, I guess, struggle to make friends or find making friends hard. I guess, what are some ways that if you've experienced struggles making friends? I'm pretty sure that's a universal experience, but like, what have those, I guess, barriers been, or things that have made you nervous to do that?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I think that the biggest barrier that which I've personally faced is me just putting in more effort than the other. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
I think that there's definitely some. I think everyone has experienced this where they try to become close to someone, but it doesn't really work out that well.
Yeah.
And like, you try to go all your way to help them, listen to them, and just be a good friend, but it's not really reciprocated as much as you would like it compared to what you put in. And I guess after some time you kind of realize that like it's not worth it. It's not worth trying to put yourself out there if like you don't get anything back, because you deserve better.
Yes.
And I guess another one which I have faced is just like me feeling like an imposter, or like just having imposter syndrome. I think that sometimes we kind of put ourselves in situations where like we're not like the rest in that sense. We're like there's like some sort of difference between you and the rest of the people in a group. And I think that because of that difference, a lot of people kind of aspire, or not aspire, but like try to push themselves to be more like the rest of the group, to match and just call them their friends because that's what you want, and just to feel like quote unquote at home, or like you found your group. So like my previous thing, I guess that's just something that just happens over time, and you learn the pros and cons and who your real friends are over time, and there's not really a proper way to do it. I just think it's one of those experiences that everyone kind of goes through, and like it's definitely a barrier for sure.
Yeah. I think my biggest struggle with making friends is the fact that I don't like to initiate things. Because you can't really rely on other people to initiate things if that's what you want. You kind of have to go for it. But honestly, I think the reason I don't initiate things is because I'm comfortable either way. So it's not so much of a barrier because I already have like a pretty good group of close friends that I'm comfortable with. So I don't really seek out that many friendships anymore. But if there was like a challenge or a hurdle for me to get over, that would probably be it. I think my bigger struggle more than making friends is keeping friends, but that's a whole different story.
I think one thing that stuck out to me that both of you actually said was you mentioned how you were always the person initiating and how you're normally the person that doesn't initiate. And I think, okay, like going back to high school and stuff, I was always the floater friend. Like, I didn't have a solid friend group, but like I knew people like from every friend group. I could like hang out with them, talk to them when I wanted to, but I never really felt like I belonged. I never felt like, like I was a part of the clique. Like, they would hang out without me and stuff. I never felt relevant, and like I was yearning for that connection. And now I'm at a point where I feel like I overwhelm people with how much effort I put in. I'm always asking to hang out, always asking to study and do things. And it was until like I started talking to people that made me realize that like, oh, for some people the pandemic made them like enjoy their solitude. Like, maybe they don't want to hang out, maybe they're not thinking or feeling the same thing as me. And I've like sort of learned to be okay and comfortable with that. But I do still find myself putting in more effort in hopes of like, oh, like somebody's gonna want to reciprocate, somebody's gonna want to do these things. I'm gonna find this friend group that I was like yearning for in high school, because I think media has a lot to do with like our expectations of friendships. Because I like always wanted that like teenage high school friend group of like friends going out at night and doing crazy stuff, and I'm still seeking that even though I'm not a teen anymore. But yeah, yeah. What about you, Zane?
Let's see. What was the question again?
Because
there's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Because I want to be specific in my answer.
What kind of struggles have you had to make friends?
Oh yeah, I was thinking about this. So, I think for me, it's definitely like, like putting yourself out there, right? Because you have to put yourself out there and be in a position where people want to be your friend, where you're actively trying. So for my first 2 years of high school, I didn't do that, right? I wasn't involved in any clubs. I kind of really just like went to class, 8 to 3, went home, and then did whatever. It wasn't until my junior year where I really started to put myself out there. I went to Club Rush. Started joining clubs, and after class, like in like passing periods, like after school, I just walk up to a bunch of people. I'll be like, hey, what's going on, whatever. So really, it started off small like that, but it was like the thought and the process of putting myself out there, because before that it was nothing. So how I mentioned it being small. Before that, it was nothing. So it was like the small increase every day, and like trying to put myself out there.
Right.
So I think that was definitely one of my struggles, just putting myself out there.
One thing that reminds me of is like kind of faking it till you make it, and not faking the person you are, but sort of faking that confidence. Because I think junior, senior year were like, again, like the most active years of my life, where I was hanging out with the most people, doing the most things, and I was honestly being a little fake with the person I was. I was not as confident and quirky as I tried to be, but I had to put myself out there because, the effort you make really matters.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I have a question. How important is friendship to you personally? And how does that kind of like manifest in who you are? Like, what are some ways in which you experience whether friendship is necessary or not to you, and how important it is?
I think I value friendships more than anything, if I'm being honest. And I know for a lot of people, like, that doesn't seem to be the case. A lot of people value their family, they value, like, their academics. Like, they're never gonna choose to hang out with somebody over studying and getting their work done. But it's always been the opposite for me. I don't know why, but I love doing things with people. I love being surrounded by people, and I rarely ever feel the need to, like, recoup into my own space and, like, what's the word, recover. I think it's a personality thing because, again, it's different for everybody, but I think I thrive when I'm surrounded by people the most, and that often leads to me putting in a lot more effort, and sometimes I feel like people get tired of that, which I understand. Yeah.
I think for me, I value friends fairly highly because, you know, friends are like family that you choose, right?
Absolutely.
So, I value friends highly, almost as a necessity, right? They're there to make you feel alive, you know? When you're with friends, you feel alive. There's this movie called The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I don't know if any of you guys have seen it, but I watched it the other day and I thought it was a lovely movie, right? You have whatever you're going on, but like, feeling like, accepted and like you belong somewhere, kind of like that sense of belonging, right?
Yeah.
Like having friends, no matter who they are, it really makes you feel alive. So, and when you're with friends, you don't think about they're a necessity, but you don't really think about like the necessities of your life, right? Most people would consider work and school a necessity, but friends make you kind of forget that, and you're kind of just like living in the moment. When you're with friends, you truly feel alive, right? Because honestly, like when we're like doing work for school or work for other things, it's kind of hard to feel like alive because you're just doing the task because it's given to you and you need to do it. But with friends, it doesn't feel that way. You just do whatever, and nothing matters, but it matters so much. Does that make sense? Like nothing matters, but it's everything.
Yeah.
So
I enjoyed listening to both you guys' kind of perspectives on that. I think for me personally, I didn't value friendship as much as I do now. I think that just going to high school, like having everyone, because I think the fact that everyone's already there, and like you're kind of forced to talk to each other, that I didn't like really desire too much of anything more. Especially, I feel like also because I come from a really large family, and I'm fortunate to have a lot of cousins. I was kind of just like, I cherish those moments more with them rather than going out with my friends. But I think that senior year, just because it was entirely online, and just even college, where like you kind of not start from scratch, but you definitely do have a kind of a fresh start. I really do appreciate those friendships I do have. Whether that be like at college, helping me with my courses, and just from moral support, and just getting an outlet for something else that's not educational, and just having bonds that's not family. I think that's something that's really really valuable, and I didn't really realize that until senior year when like I felt more alone, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I just think that I think friendship is something that like personally I keep on learning more about as the years go on, just based on my experiences. But I definitely do value it a lot more than I used to.
Yeah. Much like Zia, friendships have always been one of my biggest priorities overall as a kid. Now it's always been one of my absolute biggest priorities, which sounds crazy because I am so introverted that I always need to take breaks from my friends afterwards, but it's nothing against them. It's just I need time to recharge, mostly because most of my other friends are extroverts. But yeah, no, friendship has always been something that has been like very much needed for me, not only mental health wise, but also just like, I don't know, friends always add like this different dynamic to me. I feel like a lot of my friends are my friends because they are different from me in certain ways. Some friends make me more outgoing when I'm around them. Some friends honor the fact that I need time to myself, and so we can just hang out and do something, just the two of us and stuff like that. I have a pretty small group of friends, but they're all very, very close friends. Or at least I would consider them very, very close. Whether or not we're very, very close, I guess varies, but, generally I would say I either am very close to them or I want to be very close with them, is the way that I guess it works in my friend group. But I have a small group of friends, but honestly it's, I think sometimes we get so caught up in quantity of friends that we don't necessarily focus on the quality of the friendships we're making, whereas I would say I focus definitely more on the quality than the quantity. And I think, like, something that I've noticed with friends is that a lot of my friends have been temporary. Like, I don't have a lot of friends that have lasted a long time. Like, I have some long-term friends, but for the most part my friends have been kind of come and go with different phases of my life where, after a while we just drift apart naturally, or we move on, or we're at just such different places in life because we've grown that it just kind of like, we'll still say hi to each other and we're civil, but like we don't even really know each other anymore. And so, I think one lesson that has been the hardest to learn is that friendships are temporary, and that doesn't say anything about the quality of the friendship or how much work you put into it or anything. I think friendships drifting apart are a very natural thing. And also, honestly, it doesn't make me sad as much as it makes me happy that it happened for the first. And also, it makes me realize like different phases in my life. Like each friend I've had has taught me lessons that I take throughout my life. And also just like things that they've taught me, whether that be things like tangible things like skills, like some friends are really talented at something and they'll teach me a skill from that, or life lessons. Every friend that I have ever had has taught me something about myself or about the world, that I've been able to take and apply to my life. And I think that is so important, because if we get stuck in I want to make this friendship work, this friendship's gotta work, it could have worked, and it probably did work, but maybe it only worked for a small amount of time, and that's still a friendship. Not all friendships need to last years and decades and forever, I think it's, like I said, it's more the quality that matters, and also, sometimes drifting apart is the best thing to do when, sometimes it's just the best scenario for both of you is to move on and find other people. And that sounds like cheesy and like duh, but like it's something that actually took a really, like, as much as I knew that and was telling myself that, it still felt really hard when I had to let go of a friend or say like, I just don't really feel like I know you anymore because it's been so long since we've talked and stuff like that. So I think that's been something that I've had to learn throughout my friendships, and realizing that that doesn't make them any less valid or any less friends.
No, I think that's a big thing. How it's natural to drift apart, and also friendships should be natural. They shouldn't be forced. You can't force a friendship. Friendships will just happen naturally. And I think that's something important to keep in mind.
Absolutely, yeah.
Megan, I completely agree with you, what you just said, entirely. I think that, or at least I'm a firm believer of everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when those friendships do fade, it does happen for a reason. And although you may not know that reason now, later down the line, there might be some sort of message or purpose of that. For example, I had a really huge fallout during high school, my sophomore year, with my friends. And it really did impact me a lot. And one of my friends actually, I was super close with her since like 4th grade. And then we just didn't talk for like a year. And then we we did like say hi to each other here and there, but it was like very, very small talk. And I guess coming from us knowing about everything about each other to us like hardly knowing each other was a huge shock, and it was really sad. But ironically enough, 2 days ago they reached out, and we were just talking and just catching up. And then like they said we should hang out when they come back in town because they don't live in the Bay Area anymore. And like I think that, I guess yesterday I was kind of thinking about that, and like it helped me realize that like I really did need to leave that friend group. I think that although it was really, really bad for my mental health, I think that I wouldn't want it any other way. I think that it helped me realize that I shouldn't code switch or like I guess put a facade I'm someone else. Right. And like your real friends will come to you by just showing your authentic self. and that like I said, everything does happen for a reason. I think that me leaving that friend group pushed me to like, I guess, explore different avenues and reach out to new types of people that I might have not been so close with before. And yeah, I just, like you said, it just, everything comes with time, and there's a phase, in multiple phases, where friends will come in and out.
Right, right. Moving on from kind of that and into maybe something that's a little bit easier to talk about and something that's a little more fun to talk about. What are some ways that have helped you to make friends, or some things that you have tried, or some things that have helped you create quality friendships? Yeah.
For me, I guess it'd be, putting myself in an environment where I share a common interest with other people, and a great way to do that would be clubs, right? Schools have many clubs, and I know at Aloni, I don't know the exact number, but there are a lot of different clubs for a lot of different reasons. I highly recommend joining a club. I think it's a great way to, kind of put yourself in this environment where there's people who share the same interests as you, and honestly, a lot of people who do join clubs do so to get friends.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll find that you're not alone, and there's a lot of other people who also are, I don't say in desperate need of a friend, but like they do so to find a friend. So if you put yourself in an environment where other people are looking for friends, you have a common interest, it kind of gets you off on the right foot.
Right.
I know that Zan and I are both pretty involved with clubs, but I fully agree with that. I think that, well, when I first joined Aloni, I joined a club just to kind of see how it's like and just, I guess, get more involved with the college, especially because it was the first semester on campus again. And I actually made a few really good friends that like I text like almost every other day, if not every day, from those clubs. And like you said, like clubs are a perfect way to connect people from similar interests. So like if there is, or I guess if you do want to make a friend, it's just really nice to have that some sort of common foundation between you guys, just to kind of, I guess, have it sprout.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would definitely say check out some clubs, if not even for the friendship, but just to check out and see and meet other people who have similar interests with you.
Right.
I don't have an answer to this question, if I'm being honest. I don't know how to make friends, and I think I've like talked about this a little before, but in high school, I did have a lot of people surrounding me. I had a lot of friends, but I was also the type of person to like, what's the word? If something happened between us, I would like block you, ghost you completely, forget about you, never talk to you again. And I think after senior year, so like a little more backstory, like after graduating high school, I was actually going to a 4-year college. I was dead set. I thought I had my life figured out until the pandemic hit. And then because of financial reasons and things, I had to come to community college. And I was just so, what's the word? I guess my ego, there's something up with my ego. I didn't want to come to Ohlone because I didn't want to see people from high school ever again. So I chose to go to another community college like 30, 40 minutes away because I thought like I'd meet new people, I'd meet better people, I'd be a better person meeting these new people. And I did that. And for 2 years, I didn't make a single friend, meet a single new person at all. And until I came back to Ohlone. And one thing that I think this campus does really well is, again, the clubs and the organizations and the jobs and opportunities it offers.
Right.
I think it also helps that, like, it's a really big open campus. Like, in terms of COVID, it was safer to open some things in person again. But it's, like I've only been here, less than 6 months? Technically, like, since August. That's, 3-4 months or something.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I've made more friends in these past few months than I had in 2 years entirely. And I genuinely think it's just, like, the forced interaction, the job opportunities I've taken up, the clubs I've joined, little things I've been involved in. And I know for a lot of people that can be hard. Because you never know what to expect when you're, like, joining something, when you're getting into something. Your first experience with, like, a club or job might not be the best and might put you off from joining other things. But I really think it's, like, worth taking the risk, keeping an open mind. That too, I had a lot of expectations for what college was going to be like, and none of them came true. And I'm really glad because I'm learning so much more, and I feel like I'm more open-minded than ever before, and that's helping me make new friends.
That's awesome. I feel like my whole friendship experience comes down to 2 principles I live by. And these are things I live by outside of friendship too, but I think they really apply to the way that I orient myself in friendships and relationships. Is 1, and probably one of the most important things is authenticity. I think being yourself, as cheesy as it sounds, it is one of the most important things you can do. Whether that means, not being shy of your interests or your hobbies, or if it just means being honest and being communicative with the person you're in a friendship with. I think communication is also super important. And whether that's something whether what you're telling them is something they want to hear or something they need to hear, that communication needs to happen. And then the other thing is letting things happen naturally. Most of my friends I haven't met in like work or school conditions. I have a few friends I met that way, but most of my friends have been in really, really weird places, like at a mutual friend's birthday party that neither of us are mutual friends with, and then she randomly like Snapchatted me and was like, hey, want to be friends? And I was like, yeah, sure, I guess. So like always, it could happen at any time, so I guess just always be authentic is the real thing, because you never know when or where you're going to meet a friend, and that's also important. But yeah, and don't be afraid to let things happen naturally, because I know most of my friends I've met in places that I just naturally am in close proximity to people. I would say me and Zia are pretty close friends, and it's mostly because we're around each other a lot when we're working, and so we've had a lot more time to get to know each other in that space. So like things can happen organically too. That's also important to know. You don't always have to be putting yourself out there necessarily.
I think
Look at where you are, Just be aware of your surroundings.
No, exactly. I think it's really important to be organic, and to actually, I find that having a friendship, I guess, blossom organically really solidifies the friendship more.
Absolutely.
I think that I do think it's important for you to obviously put effort in. I think it's important for everyone to put effort in to a friendship to actually make it, kind of cultivate it. But like you guys said, I guess a lot of my friendships have just been through like positions, work. I mean, I feel like we're friends, and like we all work together, and like we kind of met because of similar interests of mental health.
Right.
And yeah, and I also think it's important to acknowledge that like a friend doesn't have to be someone you talk to all the time. I think we all kind of mentioned that we do have some friends that we don't really talk to all the time because they may not be here, they might be distant, but like we kind of mentioned, the definition of friendship is different for everyone.
Right.
But I really like how Megan, you emphasized that. Sorry, I'm blanking out.
You're good.
I like how you mentioned that. I will get back to you as soon as I remember.
I can retrace.
Wait, I was gonna say something, but I forgot to now.
Oh no! I have something to say while you guys are thinking.
It's
Yes.
contagious.
Judgment. I think judgment is a big thing, because a lot of the time, like, you can meet people and you're like, oh, like, this isn't my type of person. Like, they're a part of this type of clique, and I'm like this type of person. Like, they're a sports kid, and I'm like, whatever, something else. I don't know.
Musical theater kid.
Yeah. And it's like, you never know, because again, people, like, as much as we try to be authentic, people always put up like a certain face or an act the first few times you meet them. Like, your first impression of somebody isn't everything, and a lot of the time, at least for me, like, I've become really close friends with people I hated at first. Like, people I did not think I would get along with. People, like, because I've had bad experiences with people that were similar to them, so I kind of closed myself off to them, and eventually it was like, it's not that deep. Everybody is a unique person. Everybody is human. Everybody has feelings and thoughts. Nobody thinks they're perfect, and there's something you can find in everybody to connect to. And again, some people you connect with a lot more than others, but just sort of keeping an open mind and not being prejudiced, I guess, in a way. Yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that, because I finally remember. I was going to say, I appreciate how you mentioned to have an open mind.
Yes.
Like you said as well, and you kind of nailed it. Having an open mind is, in my opinion, one of the keys to making, or I guess, friendship in general.
And that's what makes authenticity important, is if you're both being authentic, then there's not as much to judge, honestly, because you can, there's always going to be more to get to know the person, and then you're going to find things about them that you don't necessarily love, but at the same time, like, if you're upfront, with all of you in the very beginning, it'll be easier to adjust to you, rather than you putting on a face and then all these things come out and the person's like, oh, well, I thought I knew who you were based on like the first few times we met, but now you're a completely different person. I don't know what to do now, you know, and that paralysis.
And I feel like that kind of relates to, like, you should kind of seek for discomfort in an odd way, you know?
Yeah.
I think that it's important to acknowledge, like, it's okay to quote unquote fail. It's okay to put yourself out there, even though you might be a bit scared or nervous. It's okay to put yourself out there because that's how some things progress,
Right.
pretty much.
And you still learn in the process. Like,
Exactly.
there's no true failure in that either. Like, you're always going to get something out of it, whether it's future knowledge or whatever. So just get out there, champ. But yeah, unless anyone else has anything to say.
Did you remember what you were going to say?
No, I forgot.
It's all right.
But what I can say is just try. You know, that's all you can do. Try, really.
Indeed.
You try. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know, it'll happen naturally. Just try. That's all you can do.
It's the one Shakira song. Try everything.
Yes. And on that note, our note to self for today is: a good friend is like a four-leaf clover, hard to find, lucky to have. Thanks for watching or listening, wherever you're watching or listening. Bye.